In this video we're going to be looking at sculpting up the Demogorgon from Stranger Things. Like many of you, I found myself rewatching Season 1 in preparation for Season 2 recently, and so many of my projects recently have involved mould making and casting and pressure chambers and all that sort of stuff. I just wanted to do a sculpture that was a simple one-off sculpture, just a quick sketch of the Demogorgon, just to keep things simple. So all I'm going to do here is build an armature and just do a quick sculpture of the creature. So as normal, we start with an armature, and I'm using a copper brake pipe here, which is from Cars, I think. I use this stuff because it's really easy to shape and bend, and also because it's copper I can easily solder pieces together. So here I'm just securing it to a wooden base. If I was sculpting up a human, I'd probably refer to a size guide so I could get the proportions correct, but because this is a creature I don't have to worry about that quite so much. So I'm really just making this up as I go along. Now, a lot of people use twisted wire and things like that to make an armature. I'm using the copper here, as I mentioned, because I can actually solder these pieces together. And I found that if you're winding wire together, even if you do get it quite tight, there's still a degree of give to it. So I found that solder joints work much better. So you can see here I've wound some copper wire around the armature. That's partly to allow the clay to stick to it, but I'm also soldering the joints together. So now that my armature's done, I'm just blocking out the main shapes of the sculpture. What I actually did here, chavant can be quite tough when it's cold, so what I did was to put a bunch of it in the oven at about 60 degrees centigrade, so it was nice and soft when I was actually blocking this out. So that makes things much easier for making the basic shapes of the sculpture. Now, because this is just a quick sketch, I'm not really paying too much attention to pictures of the creature itself, so this isn't going to be a 100% faithful sculpture of the creature. I'm just going to sort of do it as I remember it. And despite this being a creature, I'm still paying attention to how the muscles sort of lie on a typical human form. So as you can see, I've got the sort of pectoral muscles going on there and the shoulders as well. The limbs are all very elongated though, and I'm trying to sort of sculpt in a type of pelvis shape to it as well. I think once I'd actually done this, I found that I'd seemed to have included quite a lot of details from the newborn from Alien Resurrection. Much as I hate that film, and the newborn for that matter, the look of the thing was still kind of cool. Once I have the basic shapes of the creature down, I start refining with some loop tools to sort of try and smooth the legs and various other bits down into the correct form. Something I've recently found myself using is these silicone, I guess they're brushes. I find them quite useful because they don't create quite as hard an impression on the sculpture as a metal tool. So that's quite nice for getting some more subtle variations between shapes. I did the hands separately, and the armature is just made by winding some wire together here to get the right shape. I've then sculpted those up separately, then used the bits of wire that's sticking out there to attach it to the main armature. I just find that much easier to do complicated shapes like the hands separately away from the main sculpture. That way you don't have to keep turning the entire thing at odd angles as you try and sculpt them up. Now, I mentioned in a previous video that I went down to Gosport for the subaquatic steampunk weekend a few weekends ago, and I took this sculpture down for the weekend to give me something to work on while I was at the event. So this is why this has changed location to the Submarine Museum. Now, of course, the iconic thing for the Demogorgon from Stranger Things is the sort of petal-like shapes on its face. So rather than try and sculpt these up as part of the main sculpture, I've actually made the shapes separately, and I'm now attaching them onto the sculpture here. I don't have any access to reference here at the event, so I'm really just making this up as I go along. I think with this sort of thing though, because it's got such an iconic look though, the smaller details perhaps are less impressive. People were coming up to me and looking at the sculpture, and I'd ask them what it was before I'd put the petals on, and obviously not many people could tell what it was going to be. But once I'd got the petal shapes on the head, everybody instantly was going, that's the Demogorgon from Stranger Things. Well, I have to say, fewer people were familiar with Stranger Things than I thought actually. There were quite a few people where I said, can you guess what it is? And they sort of looked at me blankly, and I went, Stranger Things? And they just stared at me blankly. So I guess maybe Stranger Things is mostly for nerds, I don't know, but I always thought it was massively popular. So I'm trying to get a nice curve to the spine here. I think my version of the Demogorgon's a little bit more gangly than he is in the show, and I'm sort of doing him quite skeletal as well. A lot of the time though, I find that when you start adding bits to a sculpture, it sort of teaches you how it should look. So the head might be at a particular angle and you suddenly sort of think, oh well, actually maybe the back should curve like this to sort of follow that form. So a lot of the time when I'm making stuff, it sort of evolves naturally as I sculpt. So I know some people will plan things out meticulously and get everything down in fine detail, but I find it much more fun to just make things up as I go along effectively and let the idea evolve as we progress. That can mean that sometimes sculptures just completely change as I go, but I kind of view that as part of the creative process, really. So here you can see I'm putting some details onto the stomach, and I wanted it to sort of look all sort of wrinkly and get some nice sort of skin textures in there. I've cut a bunch of shapes in there, but what I'm also doing is adding some blobs of clay on top. That way it's not just the process of me removing stuff, but I'm actually adding stuff on as well. So that just sort of creates some variation in the level of the sculpture, so it doesn't make it look like just one shape with some holes cut in it. So you can see here as well, I'm cutting in some texture to the back as well. I kind of figure the skin's going to be all sort of wrinkly and sort of got a lot of texture to it, so I'm just cutting in lots and lots of lines that are crisscrossing. So here's where we are with the back, and as you can see I've got the shoulder blade in there and some sort of I guess twisted flesh-like detail around the spine. As you can see, I've got some texture which crosses over the lines of the ribs, so I find it quite useful if you're doing forms to sort of sculpt them in, but then to put skin texture and detail that goes in a different direction to the forms to sort of break them up slightly. And then I'm smoothing it down with white spirit. That will melt the chavant clay quite nicely and give me a nice smooth finish. So finally the detailing on the mouth, and obviously the Demogorgon's got millions and millions of teeth by the looks of things, so I didn't want to have to actually sculpt every single one of those in individually. Some time ago I found myself making some small talons or teeth-like shapes out of green stuff. It's just a two-part epoxy, so you mix the two parts together, make a shape and then leave it and it will dry sort of rock hard. So I've had these for ages and I thought it'd be quite useful here. So I'm just pressing these into a clay into a sort of a pattern that looks about right. And I think that'll do for my teeth for the creature. So there we go, there's my sculpture. Like I say, it's only a sketch, so I'm not going into this with too much detail. I could spend hours and hours and hours refining and adding detail, but this is just for fun really. Like I said, I've done so many sculptures which required moulds, casting and all that stuff, so it's nice just to do a quick sculpture and have some fun with it for a change. Anyway, that's it for this video, so I hope this has been interesting or useful in some way, and thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Thanks very much for watching. I'll be posting videos on future projects, so if you'd like to keep up with what's going on, please do subscribe. Alternatively, you can visit my website, which is www.thedarkpower.com, or you can find me on Facebook, just search for The Dark Power.